Ladies and gents, my name is Xander, aka Diaside, and in this video, we're going to discuss 40 meter range 2-taps using 120 RPM hand cannons in Destiny 2 Beyond Light. Dia-Slayers, I ain't gonna lie, this is just mind-boggling and I can't believe it myself, but it's true. And to be more exact, you can actually achieve these 40 meter plus 2-taps without even getting a single kill. Yes, there's actually two ways in which you can do so. And so to really find out how these 120 RPM hand cannons are going to annihilate, decimate, and eradicate every single guardian in your path, the only thing we have to do is just to simply sit back, relax, make sure to grab that Mountain Dew, and then visit the notification button, and let's jump right into the video. It's at this point in time that I would normally like to go over the 3 ways in which this thing can 2-tap, 2 of which don't even require you to actually get a kill to do so. Don't worry, we'll cover that in just a few seconds. But before that, I really want to show you how this thing can 2-tap at 40 plus meter range, and that's just mind-boggling. As we go right into the private match, I take out my Darcy and I measure exactly 40 meters. Lo and behold, I take out this True Prophecy, and sure enough it does 90 per crit, which is the maximum damage possible. Going back just a smidge to 41 meters, we then see that this thing's then doing 87 per crit. And this then tells you and me that this True Prophecy right here has an optimal effective range at 40 meters. Now you might be wondering, okay, well what kind of roll do I have to increase this range? Pretty much absolutely nothing. And you guys can see that roll right there on screen, as it's got Rampage, Overflow, and Accurized Rounds. You'll also notice that that Accurized Rounds perk is the only perk increasing the range. And thus, if you happen to have a different roll, something like say Opening Shot, or maybe Rangefinder, or maybe even Explosive Payload and Rangefinder, oh my goodness gracious, this thing's going to 2-tap at ranges that is just craziness, and again, you don't need Rampage to 2-tap, more about that in just a couple of seconds. Now while we're on the topic of private matches, I want to go right back in there and test one more thing, specifically Bullet Magnetism at 20 meters and 30 meters respectively. Right off the bat then we got 20 meters. As you guys can tell, I'm shooting on the right hand side of the head first and using the sniper rifle light to actually measure my gauge and how far I am away from the head. Sure enough, I'm at the outer limits of that light and I'm still able to land critical headshots. On the top side of the head, I'm still actually able to land shots far outside of your typical hitbox, just above the health bar, which is just nuts. But then when we go back to 30 meters, we're going to see even better results on the right hand side of the head, but a little bit worse on the top side of the head. And the reason why we know this to be true is because you're seeing the results for yourself right now. On the right side of the head, I'm actually able to go to the outer limit of the sniper rifle light to where you can barely see that light and still able to land critical headshots. However, on the top side of the head, I'm just barely able to land shots above the enemy guardian's health bar, and that tells you that this thing's still very lenient at 30 meters as well as 20 meters, but what does it really mean? Well, let's put it this way. If you want to miss shots on the top side of the head in close range distances, as that's where the Bullet Magnetism is going to be the best. But if you're at cross map distances like 30 and 40 meters, then that's when you want to land shots on the right hand side of the head, as that's where Bullet Magnetism tends to be a tiny bit higher at those ranges. And seeing these test cases at 40 meters for the range, and also 20 meters and 30 meters for the Bullet Magnetism, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that these things are actually hitting at these distances, let alone have this much leniency. And so for that one reason alone, you should use these things right freaking now. But that aside, you're still going to have more incentives to use these things, and that's because the True Prophecy as well as the entire 120 RPM archetype of hand cannons are now able to have an optimal TTK at 1 second on the dot instead of what they previously were at 1.07 seconds. Inversely to this is the body shot TTK, and their body shot TTKs are precisely 1.5 seconds, and they can do so with exactly 4 body shots. Just so we're all on the exact same page, here's the information that I've just said right there on screen. And the 2 things that I want you to note here is that the optimal TTK can be done with 2 crits and 1 body with exactly a Guardian at 198 points of health or 9 resilience. The second thing to note though is that they're then doing 90 per crit and 50 per body. And this then actually means that if we get 2 bodies and 1 crit, we're still doing 190 cumulative points of damage. And that's still enough to take out a Guardian and I believe 3 or 4 resilience, but don't quote me on that as I'm just going off the top of my head. This then proves the point once again that these things are very lenient. And so you can get shots for body shots or for crit shots and still get the optimal TTK at 1 second on a quite frequent basis. And it really just depends upon the Guardian's health in which you're facing off against. But what about those 2-taps? Phenomenal question, my friends. And the way in which this thing can first of all do this, at least for the True Prophecy, is via Rampage. Now, although Kill Clip can't actually roll on the True Prophecy, it can roll on other 120 hand cannons, and so in that sense, Rampage and Kill Clip can still 2-tap on a very regular basis. Taking a little bit of a closer look at the Rampage perk on True Prophecy, when you happen to have Rampage times 1, it's then going to do 99 for a crit and 56 for a body. But this then means to us that its optimal TTK can then go down to a 2-tap at 0.5 seconds. Ka-ching! That's what I'm talking about, cash money in the bank, and I'll take that all day long. But the second way in which this thing can actually do so is without even having a first kill, and that can be done when charged with light. Now I'll come back to the exact ways in which you can become charged with light and the exact specific perks that I'm using to do so, but for right now what I also want to focus on is the third way in which you can actually 2-tap once again without ever getting a single kill, and that is by using the Whisper of Hedron's Fragment. This one of Fragment states that it gives a bonus to weapon damage after freezing a target with stasis, but unfortunately does come with a negative 10 strength penalty. Personally, I'm okay with that because that damage buff is happening from all these stasis subclasses. Whether or not you're a hunter, a titan, or a warlock, it doesn't matter, as it can be done from the super, the grenade, or the melee abilities in a wide variety of situations. And knowing this, the question then becomes, okay, well, how much damage is Charged with Light doing, as well as the Whisper of Hedrons? And to be exact, I'm not going to go any further because I'm going to show you this right there on screen. On the left, we got Rampage times 1. In the center, we got Charged with Light, and on the right, we got the Whisper of Hedron's damage buff. As you guys can tell, these all have an optimal TTK at 0.5 seconds, half a second flat. But the other key takeaway is that their crit damage numbers are 99, 108, and 113, and going from left to right. When charged with light or using the Hedron's damage buff, this can be done at 10 resilience, and so it's not going to matter in the slightest whether or not you're happening to face off against a Guardian with 1 resilience or 10 resilience, the end result is still going to be the same. And keep in mind that charged with light, nor the Whisper of Hedron's damage buff, needs a single kill. That's right, Dia Slayers, I'm telling you that 2 of the 3 ways in which these 120 rate of fire hand cannons can 2-tap don't even need a single kill to do so, and I'm like, do this right freaking now, because you're going to be landing crit after crit after crit, and getting so many of those oh so juicy, spicy, crispy 2-taps that you're going to get that dopamine sent to your brain over and over again, and you simply won't be able to get enough. If that wasn't enough food for thought, I want to add one more seasoning to this wonderful stew so that we can have this oh so delicious taste in our mouths and say check please, thank you, come again to every single Guardian who comes into our live sight. This food for thought is that when you happen to have these kinds of damage buffs, whether that be 99 for Rampage times 1, over 100 for Rampage times 2 and Rampage times 3, and the same thing is also said for the Whisper of Hedron's buff as well as that Charged with Light, these things are then going to have an increased range even more so to still 2-tap you. Never ever forget that the damage buff associated with these is in effect a range buff as well, and so you can go back to potentially 45, maybe even above 45 meters and still 2-tap somebody, which is just absolutely insane. Now think about this, what happens when you happen to have an entire team in comp using 120 rate of fire hand cannons? Just like the old Kool-Aid mascot used to say, oh yeah. And that's what I'm talking about, because you're going to be able to team shot at mass ranges that simply aren't going to be able to be done with any other kind of weapon in this entire game. Granted, it might be able to be done with scouts, but let's be honest, scouts are really not that effective, and they sure as heck can't have that kind of 2-tap potential that these 120s have. And so in that sense, you're going to be able to have a wide variety of ranges with tremendous amounts of lethality being used, as well as having team shot effectiveness all be correlating to 1. I think it's safe to say that you guys now see where I'm going with this, so if I was you, take a couple of your teammates, try these out for yourselves, and go into comp as well as in quick play. I did that, and that's what this gameplay is showing you, and I'm telling you from first-hand experience that we are just dominating, and it's such a gratifying feeling that the enemy Guardians might just become a little bit salty. Alrighty my friends, and having said all this fluff campus trash shenanigans, the very next thing that I want to come back to, which I said from earlier in the video, is how I am specifically becoming charged with light, because that right there is happening on a very frequent basis, and the way in which I'm doing so is by 5 specific perks. First up, we got stacks on stacks, ensued by quick charge, powerful friends, taking charge, and high energy fire. On my helmet, we got stacks on stacks, and this is then going to give me an extra stack of charge with light for every single stack that I gain at the cost of negative 10 recovery. On my gauntlets, you'll then find quick charge, and this is going to allow me to become charged with light by rapidly defeating multiple combatants with fusion rifles or shotguns, but at the same time, it it also greatly increases my ready speed with fusion rifles, shotguns, and submachine guns, as well as swords. On the chest piece, you'll then find Powerful Friends, and Powerful Friends states that when you become charged with light, nearby allies also become charged with light, but at the same time, it gives you plus 20 mobility, and that's going to help you out tremendously, especially for that strafe speed. On my legs, you'll then find Taking Charge, and Taking Charge allows me to become charged with light simply by picking up Orbs of Power, one of the easiest ways in which you can ever become charged with light. Lastly, on my cloak, you'll then find High Energy Fire, and it states that while charged with light, gain a bonus to weapon damage, and that each combatant that you then defeat consumes 1 stack of charged with light. Just to kind of give you an example of how this works, let's go ahead and take this as a hypothetical. You get 1 typical kill with your True Prophecy or any 120 rate of fire handgun, and after that, you then proc Rampage or you proc Kill Clip, getting that fantastic 2-tap. Once you do so, you then automatically generate a charge with light orb, and that's then going to allow you to also continue this 2-tapping potential even if the effects of Rampage or Kill Clip happen to die out. Now you go into the next engagement. What are you? Charged with light. And because you're charged with light, you're still going to be able to 2-tap. And so you can go from not just 1 Guardian, but 2 Guardians and still 2-tap them because of this other wonderful perk, Stacks on Stacks, allowing you to get 2 stacks of charge with light every single time that you pick up an Orb of Power. Not too shabby if I would say so myself, but then also take this into account. Now we're going to the next engagement and we don't happen to have either Rampage nor do we happen to be charged with light, but rather we happen to have our stasis abilities and we free somebody via our super, our grenade, or maybe even our melee abilities. What's going to happen next? You guessed it, Whisper of Hedrons is then going to proc for a cumulative total of 10 seconds. This is then going to allow us to once again have even more potential to 2-tap within that 2 seconds, but also think about it like this. Most likely, you're going to get 1, potentially 2 kills. That's then going to proc Rampage, it's also going to proc Kill Clip, and at the same time, you might even generate an orb, and so you can see then how this is going to continue into a domino effect of 2-taps, 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 for what's going to seem like decades as if you're in Inception. That's a great way to be in Inception if I don't say so myself, but hey, let me know your guys' thoughts on this down in the comment section below, and whether or not this kind of mentality, or rather, whether or not this build with this 120 rate of fire handgun is going to work for you. After viewing this video, I know for a fact I've given you multiple incentives to do this 2-tapping potential with these types of weapons, but for your friends, remember, team shots are key, so by all means, share this video with them so then they can see us firsthand for themselves, and then all of you can send Guardians into the Shadow Realm just like in Yu-Gi-Oh!, meeting Anubis a little bit sooner than what they might expect. That's pretty much all I've got for you as of right now, Dia Slayers, and as always, GG TNT.